most Americans understand. Namaste. So thank you all for joining this show. And today we have our favorite guest panelist. You love him because of his frankness, candor, and his the knowledge which he has acquired over the years. And so let us all welcome Abhijit Iyer Mitra.
Thank you for having me on.
Namaskar. So this, I called it a surgical strike on Bollywood. Was it planning, or was it like just happened, or was it by accident?
Look, I don't think it was a surgical strike in that, it was just a building of rotten wood that was waiting to, just blow into fire. It was just, it just needed a simple push, and it was going to come down. There's been so much rot in Bollywood over the ages, it's not even funny. I mean, you look at it, the very basis of it, which was this sort of very, very slimy, political, financial underworld nexus. And today, we're just seeing a little bit of it emerge. Because remember, criminality is fungible. There is no drug dealer who will say, I will only stick to heroin smuggling in Florida. I won't expand to cocaine smuggling or marijuana smuggling and things like that. I don't know if Florida has legalized marijuana right now. I'm just assuming it's all illegal. The only reason he will say, I am not going to go beyond Florida is because he doesn't want a turf war with other gangs. So, this is the thing that you have about criminality. And Bollywood has been criminal for a very, very long time, simply because if you notice Bollywood stories, it's the same story over and over and over again, just a different boy, a different girl, different music and different costumes and different locations. Otherwise, they're all basically what you used to call variety entertainment, right? It used to be around in the early 1900s up to the 1950s, I guess, 50s or 60s even, where you needed to have a few songs, you needed to have a little bit for everybody, a bit of romance for the adults, a bit of tomfoolery for the kids, a bit of slapstick comedy for other people, and so on and so forth. So there's been absolutely ossification, zero evolution. And essentially, therefore, what has happened is the risk of making a Bollywood movie today is so extraordinarily high. There is no guaranteed formula of what is going to become a hit and what is not going to become a hit. And this then becomes a problem, because then how do banks lend money to it? What are the criteria for lending money to something like that? So as a rule, banks don't lend too much money. And then what happens is most of the fundraising, because the stakes are so high, stars get paid so much, that you borrow from illegal sources. And this is where you get compromised to illegal sources, which then turns into bomb making and, supporting terrorists and so on and so forth. You saw this during, the Mumbai bomb blasts, where Mahesh Bhatt's son got caught up in all of this. He was apparently a friend and gym trainer to that American Pakistani who's now serving a life term in America right now. And the thing there is, they were all my journalist friends in Mumbai tell me that they were forced to drop the investigation into the boy. The government didn't want to continue an investigation into the boy. He was just given a sort of, after 2-3 years of scrutiny, it was just told to sort of pipe down, shut up, and go out. And see, once you compromise yourself on things like, say, drugs or whatever, or money laundering, it becomes, you fall into every trap. Your ISI handler will then call up, and it's not necessarily ISI, it'll be a drug ring or something like that. But then they will hand you over to the ISI. And the ISI will say, there's this guy, very sweet boy, help him out and la-di-da. You don't know what the hell he is, but you'll help him out, you let him stay in your house or whatever, and then it'll turn out he was a bomb maker or something like that. What are you going to do about it? So, this is lots of things coming home to roost. Extreme high risk, lack of profitability, very, very high overhead costs, a glut of funding, essentially becoming a front for money laundering and the fungibility of criminality.
You put it so well because what I've seen over the years, as far as Bollywood, the difference between Bollywood and Hollywood is a very corporate, shareholder-driven culture. So there is a high accountability at every step. Bollywood is filled with nepotism and also filled with very like a sub quality. Uh, I mean, I was just listening to the on YouTube the dialogues and the way they were threatening each other. It looks like a street gully boy, and
But
unfortunately,
it does. It has to go to. So there's this thing that the definition of a great movie was meant to be the brief suspension of disbelief, which is for a moment. Aliens land in Norway. You remember that movie? Was it Pathfinder? No, it was something else. Aliens land in medieval Norway, Viking Norway, and then Vikings go to kill. It was a big outsider or Outlander or something like that. It was a hit movie. Now, forget the fact that aliens landing in 9th century Norway. You're meant to suspend your disbelief at it. That is what a movie used to be about. Today, there's a movement towards realism. I don't like that movement. So, one of the reasons that Iranian movies keep winning international awards is because they're not given the religious freedom by their theocracy to do too much in terms of fantasy. So they have to do real life. And so they move towards a great deal of, precision in real life. And I find that really boring because that's not why I watch a movie. For me, real life has always been geopolitics and things like that is much more interesting. But family drama, for me, I go through enough family drama that I don't want to watch that on screen as well. I want to escape, which is why I watch Star Wars or Star Trek. I'm both a Trekkie and a Star Wars person. Though I have to admit I prefer Darth Vader to anybody on the good side. Darth Vader is like my gold standard. I'm on the dark side of the Force. May the Force be with all of you, by the way. And what happens is that you have this whole movement towards specialization in the West. Even animation and the brief suspension of disbelief has gone to such an extraordinary level of precision and grandeur, and you can do so much with it. You look at comedy, it's gone so far. Why? Because you have specialization, economies of scale, specialization, and the incentivization of talent, great measures of risk and things like that. In India, primarily because we're still an agrarian economy, the people are primarily miserable. They don't want to deal with real life. They go to these movies to go off into a fantasy land. And the problem is because there's not enough money for, a fantasy or whatever. Everything has to be a romance. Everything has to have a little bit of everything. You're basically going away. These are all supposedly rich families. Or the boy is dirt poor, he falls in love with a super rich woman, and surprisingly she falls back in love with him, which happens exactly never in India because the class divide is so great. In the West, the class divide isn't all that pronounced. Because you could, in Australia, for example, you could be a millionaire and you could be a truck driver and you'd sit and enjoy a beer or a Coke or something at a bar together. There was never any social barriers. When you went to the cities, it became much more accentuated and exaggerated because wealth inequality and things like that, and social barriers are much greater. But in India, that just hasn't happened. You never have these fairy tale stories. So these are all, getaway sort of fantasy thing. So it's a reflection of society. And that is probably why Bollywood was and still remains third rate. Third rate in every sense of the word. Third rate in terms of acting, third rate in terms of storyline, third rate in terms of conceptualization, third rate in terms of dialogue, third rate in terms of graphics. How many movies have you had? Say Bahubali came out, which was fantasy, which did really well, which was one-off. You had, say, Sarkar, which came out, which was, again, a fantastic movie, which, twisted plot. But these are the exceptions that we remember. Omkara came out, which was a take on Othello, I guess. But again, that was Othello. Even in Tamil, we've had one or two good movies, but there were remakes of Pride or Prejudice or something like that. And there's no money for really great movies in India because that is not what sells. People don't want to know about their own misery. They want to get out of their misery for those 2 hours and 300, 400 rupees that they pay for a ticket.
No, you're so right. You're so right because I, there is a trend in Bollywood to make fun of like Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan will never bow down to a temple, and Salman Khan will not fold. All this drama, a lot of things are there, which doesn't speak of intellectual or artistic independence. They're all driven by an ideology. So either they are, like the movie PK was such offensive to Hindus, and that many people stopped watching it, but they can't help it. Even in the, every instance of the movie where these Khan brothers and the whole inside the whole community of that who is in the Bollywood, they have tried to work against Hindus, and I think that's where the Hindus are turning against Bollywood, even though they
Look,
started.
I don't, I would disagree with that in a sense. I think we need to separate two things. I think there's a lot of rot within Hinduism, regressive, nonsense really, which we need to acknowledge and we need to get rid of because, every religion has its rotters, of course. I mean, no religion is perfect in that sense. The problem with Hinduism is that we have a lot of rot, but we also have a lot of lack of education. We don't have one book. You can pick and choose what you want in Hinduism. You can literally cherry pick. You can be a beef eater and be a Hindu. I have Jewish friends who are culturally Jewish who will do the bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, whatever for son or daughter. But you go to their house, they'll serve you up a roast loin of pork. Slow cooked smokehouse wala bahut acha tasty stuff. That's been smoked for like 24 hours and things like that. Those amazing cuts. Of course, one is dirty, one is sacred. We shouldn't confuse the two. I mean, that's a different conversation we can have at a different point of time. But the thing here is, Hinduism has always been about the individual. You do you. That's that famous American saying, you do you. That's what Hinduism is about. You don't have to believe in any one thing or whatever. The problem is, when you say you do you, there is also a lot of room for being regressive. You can say, I don't believe in caste, and that's perfectly Hindu as well. But you can say, oh my God, I'm obsessed with caste. I will not touch you. I will not touch you. I will not eat the food that you have eaten. I will not serve you the food that I am eating, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, that is also perfectly legitimate. In that sense, Hinduism is the great granddaddy of freedom of expression. You were allowed to do whatever you want. It was the gold standard of freedom of expression in that sense. That is the USP. Now, if people want to make fun of Hinduism, especially all the superstitions and things like that, I'm absolutely fine with it. You remember where Paresh Rawal, for example, played a con man in a godman, as they call them, the saffron robe wearing frauds and things like that. I'm perfectly fine with it. By all means, do it. Right? So, for example, a lot of Western movies come out about the abuse of the Catholic Church, abuse even of certain Protestant denominations and things like that, the harshness with which they dealt with children and women, child abuse, whatnot, what have you, and so on and so forth. The problem here is that the people making these movies about Hindus are Muslims who refuse to criticize their own religion.
Right.
Okay. Now, I think Hindus should be able to criticize Christianity. Christians should be able to criticize Hinduism. Buddhists should be able to criticize Hinduism. Hindus criticize Buddhism and all of that, which is perfectly fine. I have no issues with that. You can be as offensive as you want. I'm a big supporter of offensive humor. By all means, do it. What I will not tolerate is somebody saying, oh, you are intolerant. I, on the other hand, will not criticize my own religion. And I'm going to pretend it's extremely tolerant, even though I'm shit scared that the moment I criticize my religion, I will be killed or suicide bombed or something like that. That is what I have an issue with. Okay, so remember, for 5,000 years, we didn't. Temple building is a relatively new concept. It starts off only about what 1,700, 1,500 or so years back. Before that, it was all going into the forest, lighting the sacred fire, and doing sacrifices into the sacred fire, pouring ghee into the fire. In fact, the word Jesus Christ itself, Christ, has a Sanskrit root. It's grai. Grai is the old word for ghee. And when you anointed, so ghee is basically clarified butter, you all know that. It's sticky. And what used to happen was when you said a prayer to it, the belief was the prayer stuck to it. You then poured it into the sacrificial fire, it would burn, and the prayer would then the smoke would carry the prayer up to the heavens. The other thing was, because it stuck, you took the sacred ghee with the prayer and you put it on somebody's forehead, you anointed them. And that was gritasta. Grit est, same in Latin, est. You become the ghee, you are anointed with the ghee in that sense. And this was the same thing that used to happen in Greece as well, with all the old Indo-European cultures, Greece and Rome. You got anointed, though with olive oil in the Mediterranean, and that was Christos. Grit asta, Christos, which becomes, Christ, Jesus the Anointed. Christos technically his Jewish name was Yeshua ben Yusuf, Jesus the son of Joseph. But Christos is the Greek word for derived from the same guy. So all of this is fine. I'm fine with all of that. We've got a lot of the same roots and things like that. I'm totally fine with that. But please don't give me this nonsense that you're going to go on attacking my religion when your religion has a lot more rot than my religion does. And then, claim that I'm the only intolerant one and you aren't. Whereas the reality is that you refuse to criticize your own religion because you're shit scared that somebody will decapitate you, suicide bomb you, or throw you off a roof.
So one question has come from the curious audience. Why do Bollywood actors and actresses dance around the trees?
Because they're too stupid to do anything else. If you look at the dance moves, if you look at the songs and whatever, there's the same set of choreographers over and over again. And this dancing around trees thing, it's actually an old erotic rhetorical device that comes from Kalidasa, from Kumarasambhava. If you go to the 7th canto of Kumarasambhava, it's highly erotic. Remember, we used to be a sexually very, very permissive culture. Okay, for 4,000-5,000 years, we were very open about sex. Our temples have sex depicted on them because this was, it's considered something normal. It's like food. It's like dressing up. It's like gems and jewelry. It's an art. It's to be celebrated. Remember Amarapali, there's a whole Buddhist story about Amarapali, how she becomes a Buddhist nun. She was a courtesan. Why? Because the sexual arts, they were not considered, sex wasn't considered dirty. It was considered a great art. To be good at it, you were exalted. She was an elected city official, one of the earliest elected city officials you would have ever had in the Lichavi Confederacy, which then gets destroyed by Bimbisara or Ajatashatru. And, she feels betrayed and the Buddha is going through that area and then she becomes a disciple of Buddha and so on and so forth. So remember, so a lot of our literature is also highly erotic. Kumarasambhava is one of that. And if you go through the 7th canto out there, it's all about, spring has come. Everything is on heat. The animals are all on heat. They're rubbing up against trees and running around because, fertility, spring, green, flower, all of that. It was all that sort of erotic sexual connotation and things like that. And that kind of subconsciously also comes around into, because, for a long time, you weren't even allowed to show a kiss in Indian movies. It was considered vulgar as hell. So, you had to find all these oblique ways of not portraying sex. You still can't portray sex in an Indian movie, so you have to have these other symbols of fertility. You have birds kissing, you have bees going, collecting pollen from a flower, honey from a flower. They're all symbols of fertility and procreation, but you have to do it the oblique way.
Now, one last question, and I think after that our time is up on the from the university links. Uh,
No, no, we can do it. I have time if you have time.
so we have one important thing in the, especially in the Bollywood, is that most of the Bollywood uh, in India promotes artists from Pakistan. So what is that relationship like? Usually now we are, yesterday Sanjay Panda, the deputy vice president of BJP said that there are links that need to be investigated and brought out, and socially admissible tweets are there of people living in Los Angeles, right there, right here. In what is that link and how long it has been going on?
So look, there's a one side which is an innocent side to it, and there's another which is the criminal side to it. The innocent side is, remember, high culture in India was this whole Lucknowi Urdu uh, culture, which, if you go back to old Indian movies, they were all based around this high culture of Lucknow, the Nawabs of Lucknow, so Muslim, North Indian Muslim culture in that sense. And when partition happened, it continued for a long time because movies were the kind of preserve of the rich in that sense. So it was this looking up to this sort of high culture. In that sense, you can, this is the Western shift from, say, opera to rock music. Once upon a time, remember, opera was pop music. Mozart and Beethoven used to have these great hits, or Bellini or Verdi used to have these great hits. Ordinary people used to go there. It was the rock culture. They were the rock stars of of their times, I guess. And so this Urdu-dominated Lucknowi high culture was the thing. And when partition happened, it was sort of this splitting of this high culture period, which then split across two sides of the border. So there was a lot of natural impulse to call each other over to cross-pollinate and things like that. It wasn't even cross-pollination. It was this pain of being separated, the same culture in that sense being separated. Since then, culturally, we've become very divergent. Remember, East Germany and West Germany were so culturally divergent that even now, if you go to West Germany, they'll tell you we have cultural problems with people from the East. Even today, after 120, 130 years of reunification, Northern Italians have problems with Southern Italians, and Southern Italians have problems with Northern Italians. Korea, I've been to both South Korea and North Korea. The separation of culture is so huge, it's not even funny. But remember, with all of these, the common thread is they always try to reconnect because there is this belief that we were one at one point of time. So this is the innocent explanation. The criminal explanation is that ever since at least the 60s, 70s, that slow criminalization of Bollywood that we've seen. Right now, Bollywood is nothing other than a money laundering, a front for money laundering and massive, massive illegality. It is like in Delhi, if you go to Khan Market, which is the high disposable income market in Delhi, you will find shops that there is nobody buying anything in. The rents there are obnoxiously high. And you wonder how these people are making ends meet. They're not. Those shops are basically fronts for money laundering. And that is what Bollywood has become. It's become a front for money laundering. And invariably, all money laundering, all kinds of criminality in India are invariably used because they are a weakness in the system. They are used by terrorists one way or another to exploit India. And so invariably, one way or another, it goes back to the ISI in some form. So remember, there's two separate threads, innocent one and a criminalized one. It has been a sort of patina of criminalization over, or a veneer of criminalization now over a core that was initially quite innocent.
Great point. And I think it leads to me to another question, and this will be the last one. Uh, when do you think this entire Khan business? I'm not against particularly any community or anything. I'm not against any name as well, but this the infusion of capital, and we saw Mahesh Bhatt's son roaming around with 2611 terrorists and all these things. The infusion of terrorism happened in Bollywood. Or was it always there?
No, it's grown over a period of time. Remember, Bollywood also produced lots of very patriotic hits, right? Like
Wait,
what was yeah, I mean, Mere Watan Ke Logo and all of those. I mean, you have all these during the 62 China war, during the 71 Bangladesh war, during Kargil, even now the surgical strikes. There was that movie called Uri. In 71, there was that air battle, the Battle of Longewala that came in that Sunny Deol movie and things like that. So we've had a history of that as well. I don't think this is a problem just with the Khans specifically. I think the problem in Bollywood is that once you hit upon some kind of a winning formula, the basis of the industry is so rotten, you will automatically criminalize, and therefore you're automatically forced to conform to certain things. There's nothing you can do about it. Remember, Shah Rukh Khan became popular when he starred as an Indian Army soldier in a TV series called Fauji,
Fauji, right?
which means soldier. So look at the evolution of the boy as well. He starts off playing the soldier. That is the evolution you've seen in Bollywood, going from being fundamentally quite patriotic and all of that. Now, remember, I think you also need to meet a lot of these people to understand that there are very few of them who are genuinely smart in this crowd. Otherwise, they're just, I'm sorry to use this word, but they're dumb as fuck. Like, seriously, it's like you have a lobotomized Frankenstein's monster who's actually had plastic surgery to make him or her look like, I don't know, Elizabeth Taylor or Audrey Hepburn or what have you. But they are seriously, when you talk to them, you realize their brains have been some bizarre alien surgical procedure, aliens from another planet came and took their brains out or something like that. They are so dumb. You will honestly, I will honestly tell you, you sit down and talk to them, you will find having a root canal without anesthesia to be a more pleasurable experience. You will literally, if you had chilies applied where the sun don't shine, even that would be a more pleasurable experience than sitting down with these clowns for more than 2 minutes. These people don't have the brains to think these things through. They're a very low level of intellect because look at their art. Look at their craft. They are not smart people. They are entertainers in a sense. Some entertainers can also be very smart people. Unfortunately, here, because of inbreeding, because of this whole celebration of culture, of mediocrity, you're incentivized to be a moron. Okay? And that is what most of them are. They're insufferable morons. They don't even have the brains to think these things through. It's basically somebody else sitting and manipulating you. It's financial pressure talking. Remember, there's a lot of blonde bimbo jokes that go around. These so-called blonde bimbos, they may not be able to talk about, quantum physics or relativity or politics or whatever, but they know how to manipulate their husbands. They know how to manipulate people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be gold diggers, successful gold diggers. A lot of these people are like that. They don't have political smarts or whatever, but they know how to make money. They know how to sell themselves. So they go where the money goes. And in this case, and the problem is nobody in India, not even the BJP, definitely not the Shiv Sena, the Congress, is ever going to bust this entire criminal underworld nexus that Bollywood has, because a lot of the election funding also comes out of the same nexus. So you will never see that happen. It's the biggest joke right now. It's the biggest open secret that Bollywood is sort of the apex point of all kinds of criminality happening, but nobody will go after it.
No, thank you, Abhijit, for being so frank, and also thank you for viewers. So many of you are watching this show, and I won't be able to show you the Bollywood dance and music here right now. The theme of the show is different, but I hope you got the context. And some of you had asked me this question, and I thought that there's no one better to talk frankly with than Abhijit Iyer. So Abhijit, thank you for your time, and I'll do call you after the show for something else. But thank you all the viewers for watching, and keep watching. We'll bring Abhijit Iyer on these type of frank topics where you want to hear the honest opinion, and you can make your own judgment after that. Namaskar and Har Har Mahadev.
Har Har Mahadev.